Welcome to the most in-depth exploration of corruption in Nigeria, a scourge that has plagued the nation for centuries, crippling its economy, undermining its institutions, and eroding the trust of its people. But have you ever wondered how corruption took hold in Nigeria? What were the historical events, cultural practices, and external influences that contributed to its rise? From the pre-colonial era to the present day, we will take you on a journey through the complex and fascinating history of corruption in Nigeria. We will examine the role of colonialism, the impact of military rule, and the influence of globalization on Nigeria's corruption landscape. And we will explore the ways in which corruption affects the daily lives of Nigerians, from poverty and inequality to insecurity and social unrest. So, if you're ready to understand the roots of corruption in Nigeria and how it has shaped the country's history, politics, and society, then watch the rest of this video. Let's uncover the truth about corruption in Nigeria and explore what it will take to build a more just, equitable, and prosperous society for all Nigerians. Welcome to the pre-colonial era, a time when Nigeria was a patchwork of kingdoms, empires, and city-states. This was an era of great cultural achievements, but also of complex power dynamics that would lay the foundations for corruption in centuries to come. In pre-colonial Nigeria, power was held by traditional rulers such as kings, queens, and emirs. These rulers were often seen as divine, and their authority was unquestionable. But beneath the surface of these kingdoms, a complex web of relationships and alliances was at play. Traditional rulers relied on networks of patronage and clientelism to maintain their power. This system of patronage and clientelism created opportunities for abuse of power and corruption. Traditional rulers would often use their power to accumulate wealth and privilege, while their subjects were left with limited access to resources and opportunities. Despite these challenges, pre-colonial Nigerian societies were also characterized by a strong sense of community and social solidarity. Traditional institutions, such as the extended family and the village council, played important roles in maintaining social order and resolving disputes. The arrival of colonialism would disrupt these traditional systems of governance and social organization, creating new opportunities for corruption and abuse of power. A time when Nigeria was under the control of British colonial powers, this was an era of great upheaval and transformation, but also of exploitation and oppression. In the late 19th century, British colonial powers began to exert control over Nigeria using a combination of military force and diplomatic maneuvering. The British colonial authorities established a system of indirect rule where traditional rulers were allowed to maintain some autonomy but were ultimately answerable to British colonial officials. This system of indirect rule created opportunities for corruption and abuse of power as traditional rulers and British colonial officers collaborated to exploit Nigeria's natural resources and labor. The British colonial authorities also established a system of forced labor where Nigerians were compelled to work on colonial era projects such as railways and roads. The colonial era was also marked by the exploitation of Nigeria's natural resources, including oil, minerals, and timber. The British colonial authorities and their Nigerian collaborators amassed vast fortunes from the exploitation of these resources, while the majority of Nigerians remained in poverty.
1960 October. Now the battle is over. This the date we've been waiting to celebrate. Nigeria is free. Balewa, free. Azikwe, free. Our law was a downer. Nigeria is free.
After gaining independence from Britain in 1960, Nigeria was poised for greatness, but instead, the country was plagued by corruption, mismanagement, and conflict. On October 1st, 1960, Nigeria gained her independence from Britain, with Prime Minister Abubakar Tafawa Balewa leading the country. But beneath the surface of Nigeria's newfound independence, corruption was already taking hold. Government officials who were supposed to serve the people were instead using their positions for personal gain. In 1966, Nigeria's first military coup took place with General Aguiyi Ironsi seizing power. This marked the beginning of a long period of military rule, during which corruption and abuse of power became entrenched. The discovery of oil in Nigeria in the late 1950s brought great wealth to the country, but it also created new opportunities for corruption. Government officials and oil executives colluded to embezzle billions of dollars, while the Nigerian people saw little benefit from their country's natural resources. The impact of corruption on Nigerian people was devastating. Basic services like healthcare and education were neglected, while infrastructure and economic development stagnated. The Nigerian people were left to suffer, while their leaders enriched themselves. One of the primary structural factors contributing in Nigeria is the weakness of its institutions. The country's judiciary, legislature, and executive branches of government have been undermined by corruption, nepotism, and political interference. Nigeria has established several anti-corruption agencies, including the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) and the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission (ICPC). However, these agencies have been hindered by lack of funding, political interference, and limited powers. Patronage and clientelism are endemic in Nigerian politics. Politicians and government officials distribute favors, contracts, and jobs to loyal supporters, who in turn provide financial and electoral support. In Nigerian culture, respect for authority and tradition is deeply ingrained. However, this can sometimes translate into a tolerance for corruption and abuse of power. As individuals can be reluctant to challenge those in position of authority. Nigeria's economic structure also contributes to corruption. The country's reliance on oil exports has created a volatile economy, prone to boom and bust cycles. This has led to a culture of short-termism, where individuals prioritize personal gain over long-term development. Nigeria is one of the poorest countries in the world, with over 80 million people living on less than $2 a day. This poverty, combined with vast income inequality, has created a fertile ground for corruption. With limited job opportunities and a struggling economy, Nigerians are forced to rely on informal networks and corrupt practices to survive. Despite these challenges, education and awareness are key to preventing corruption. By teaching children about the dangers of corruption and promoting transparency and accountability, Nigerians can begin to build a more just and equitable society. But corruption in Nigeria is not just a domestic issue. International businesses and governments have often enabled corrupt practices, perpetuating a cycle of exploitation and abuse. Technology and social media have transformed the way Nigerians live, work, and interact. However, these same tools have also enabled new forms of corruption, from online scams and cybercrime to the spread of misinformation and propaganda. Nigeria's economy is increasingly interconnected with the global economy. However, this has also made the country more vulnerable to economic instability, trade shocks, and the actions of global economic actors. Despite efforts to reform Nigeria's institutions and combat corruption, progress has been slow. Institutional weaknesses, lack of political will, and vested interests have also hindered efforts to create a more transparent and accountable system. However, there are also reasons to be optimistic. Civil society organizations, activists, and ordinary Nigerians are increasingly demanding accountability and transparency from their leaders. As Nigeria continues to evolve and grow, the corruption landscape will likely continue to shift. But one thing is certain: the fight against corruption requires the collective efforts of Nigerians, civil society, and the government. As we have journeyed through the history of corruption in Nigeria, from the pre-colonial era to the present day, one thing is clear: corruption is a complex and deeply ingrained problem that requires a multifaceted solution. From the exploitation of Nigeria's natural resources to the institutional weaknesses that have allowed corruption to thrive, we have examined the various factors that have contributed to this scourge. But here is the thing: corruption is not just a Nigerian problem, it's a global issue that requires a collective response, and that's where you come in. As a concerned citizen, you have the power to demand change. Here are a few ways you can make a difference. 1. Stay informed. Continue to educate yourself about the issues surrounding corruption in Nigeria. 2. Get involved. Support organizations that are working to combat corruption and promote transparency. And thirdly, demand accountability. Hold your leaders accountable for their actions and demand transparency in government. And if you found this video informative and engaging, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more informative content, and share this video with your friends and family to spread awareness. Together, we can create a brighter future for Nigeria and generations to come. Thank you for watching.
The ceremony is over, the celebrations can begin. The state ball, a glittering occasion, a great gathering of Nigeria's leaders and their guests from many parts of the world, but marked by that capacity for easy informality which the princess clearly shares with the people of Nigeria. High life on a very high level. But all over the new country now, Nigerians on every level begin their own celebrations with floats and festivals, parades and processions, acrobats and dancing. In the north, as you'll see, the traditional charge of a horseman. At any time, Nigerians are great people for a show or a party. They don't need any excuse. But this time they had a reason, the greatest of all. For they're celebrating the climax of years of patient preparation by British and Nigerians alike. Their coming of age as a nation. Independence given and taken with perfect concord, without bloodshed and without rancor. The new Nigeria.